Naveen, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Naveen, what would you say your success mindset is?
Well, I think, like anyone else in life, the success really comes from when you start to change how you look at the world. So most people in the world look at the world from the mindset of scarcity. And I think once you change that mindset from scarcity to abundance, you start to see the opportunities of not what things are, but what things can be.
Absolutely.
So you don't think about there is a shortage of food, or there is a shortage of water, or there is a shortage of land.
Yeah.
You start to say, how do we create abundance? And I think the whole concept, especially in Europe, this whole idea of sustainability is just so wrong, because sustainability has become a synonym for conservation.
Absolutely.
And you can never create wealth by conserving. You have to earn more. You can't keep saving and say, I'm going to become prosperous by not spending.
Yes.
The way you create wealth is the same way you become successful in life, is to say, instead of doing less of what we have, or instead of using less of what we have, why not create more of what we need? And the world's biggest problems becomes your biggest opportunity as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Right? And that mindset, once you have that every time you see a problem, instead of asking, why doesn't someone do something about it? He'll say, wonderful opportunity. What can I do about it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's very interesting what you said, because I have this hypothesis is that they collect things. They collect, someone who's financially rich collects investments and assets, essentially. And someone who's financially poor collects coupons. And you're very right in what you said, because it's about creating abundance and not trying to conserve and say that there's a scarcity of materials, opportunities. There really isn't any scarcity whatsoever. So it's refreshing to hear that.
Thank you. But also, I think more than just collecting, it is about, people who are successful are not just look at the world from a financially successful perspective. As an entrepreneur, or as even a philanthropist, it's never about giving money, it's about solving a problem. So I think, most of the people, if you look at my definition of success, is not about the amount of money you have in the bank.
Absolutely.
But it's really about how many people's life you've been able to impact positively, right? And the only sign of success, at least in my book, is the day you become humble, is the day you become successful.
Absolutely.
Because if you still have iota of arrogance left in you, that means you're still trying to prove something to yourself, or worse, someone else. And that to me is not a sign of success, right? So once you change the definition of what success is, I think you start to look at the world very, very differently.
Yeah.
And just don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about simply the doing good. To me, doing good and doing well are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I would argue to do well, you have to do good. Because if you can help 1 billion people, you have a $10 billion business in your hand.
Absolutely. And that's the way to look at it. And it's factual. It's not a theory.
No.
If you look at any of the major corporates,
Yes.
They have served millions of people.
That's right.
And therefore they have market caps of 500 million, 200 billion on that basis. And that's the thing that people don't appreciate, I think, and get that to be rich means you can solve a challenge and be amazing at doing so. And by that, obviously accumulating a large amount of wealth that can be reinvested into various ventures that do the same again and again on a perpetual basis. Yeah.
To me, you could be extremely rich financially, you could be rich intellectually, you could be rich emotionally, or you could be rich spiritually.
Absolutely.
So I think in some sense that definition of rich is really personal.
Yeah.
But to me, it's not about just living the life of success. It's about living the life of significance.
Indeed.
And how do you change from being successful to being significant and still be something being true to yourself, right? To me, to create a $10 billion business is really, really easy. You go out and solve a very large problem.
Absolutely.
And if you solve a $100 billion problem, you'll have a $10 billion business, right?
Indeed.
And if I can go out on a limb, I think, most people have somehow this idea of businesses are evil, right?
Absolutely.
And to me, that's just such a fundamentally wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah.
No business in the long term can be successful unless they are solving a problem for someone on a consistent basis that someone is willing to pay them for it.
Absolutely.
That means it has to be a problem that's consistently being solved. And how can you not call them a corporation, a philanthropist who is really helping someone solve whatever their pain is?
Yeah.
If you have a pain, they're able to give you the aspirin. And how can they be evil?
Precisely. And also what they're doing is they're also employing people.
Yes.
Okay. They provide jobs on that basis.
Yeah.
They're assisting a whole society, in other words. So yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely spot on how people sometimes perceive it as corporations or big corporations being evil. And really, do we know any big corporation that exists to this date that has not been able to provide a good product or a good service and there isn't one that I can think of.
That's right.
So
in fact, some of them who don't, they essentially don't last forever.
Absolutely.
So even though they may have provided a great product and services, if they're not constantly evolving and innovating, they become the next Kodak.
Yeah.
And the whole definition of Kodak movement had changed.
Yes.
And now the Kodak movement is about inventing a technology that disrupts you because you were not able to move along with the technology that you invented.
Yes, absolutely. And how things have changed. Indeed.
How things have changed,
Yeah.
right?
Gosh. Yeah.
Right. So, in fact, it reminds me of an anecdote. We live in a very liberal part of the United States, state of Washington. And they had these Occupy Seattle. And people were holding this placard saying, shut down the businesses, we need jobs. And I'm thinking, do you really mean that? Who do you think is going to give you a job? The government?
Yeah, precisely. And how will it be sustained,
Yes.
quite frankly, yeah. And I think this is the notion that people need to understand, that people who create businesses from scratch and take it to £1 billion market cap and upwards, essentially, or dollars for that matter, they're in fact enriching planet Earth, and their society and so on. And I think that notion is very, very seldomly shared, essentially.
I think, it is that a lot of people somehow starting to feel, how would I say this, personal guilt just because you have been successful financially. Somehow people make you feel guilty as if you did something wrong, that you're financially successful. You need to do something for someone because you're guilty.
Yeah, how dare you?
How dare you
Absolutely.
become successful?
Yes.
And it reminds me of this whole idea that how far we have come. And I look back, I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States with almost absolutely nothing. Grew up in, reasonably poor conditions in India. Came to the United States with $5 in my pocket. And what to me, if I go back and look at those days, what made America so successful was really simple thing. It attracted the best and the brightest from around the world. And then it gave them the opportunity to succeed. So much so, we used to call that a land of opportunity. Yeah. And when people succeeded, we celebrated their successes.
Absolutely.
Right? And now look at how far we have come. We block the people from best and the brightest from coming to the country. So the brilliant students who come to Harvard and Princeton and Stanford, we want them to go back to their own country. We don't want them to stay there. And if somehow they manage to stay there and create an amazing company, guess what happens? We get every hurdle on their way that we can possibly throw. And when they do succeed, we call them 1%er and saying, you no longer belong to our society. You are a damn 1%er.
Yeah.
Now imagine that, as opposed to celebrating the success and saying, I want to be just like you. You bring them down.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's not the kind of society we should be living in. Yes. We should be living in a society where we say every one of us not only can dream big, but can achieve amazing things.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think the only way the society can fundamentally prosper is we allow the society to dream so big that people call each one of them crazy, and we eliminate their fear of failure.
Indeed.
And you see the society just flourishing.
Yeah, because failure, fear of failure is actually very, very misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because, to succeed in business, what's the statistic? 9 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 5 years. Failure is, I have my own definition of failure, and failure is very much about when you give up.
Yeah.
If you don't give up, you learn from the mistakes that you made, and you reapply different strategy from other people, and so on and so forth, and keep going, then you haven't failed, essentially.
I agree with you, Kevin, completely that, as an entrepreneur, you never fail. You only pivot.
Yes.
And the only time you actually fail is when you give up.
Yeah.
And every single idea that does not work becomes a stepping stone to even a bigger idea and a bigger success.
Absolutely.
So to me, really, as an entrepreneur, you should never look at the things that you're doing. Your idea may or may not work, but you never fail as an individual because you always learned something, and that becomes a foundation for a bigger success.
Yeah, and also the wisdom that you've gained through it.
Absolutely.
You will never lose it. I mean, a lot of people said, oh, I've lost this, I've lost my investment, da, da, da. I would say, what's the lesson you learned? Oh, to do this or to do that. And I would say, well, you haven't lost it, have you? You have the wisdom. So the next venture that you move forward, and you can apply that wisdom,
Yeah.
and somebody else who hasn't got that wisdom
Yeah.
would actually fail again,
That's true.
you know, on that particular venture, essentially. So absolutely.
And I think more or less also just to, going further on a spiritual side, people tend to look for happiness somewhere outside, and
Yes.
they always believe if they could achieve this, they'll make them successful. If they had this, that will make them successful. Happiness actually resides right inside you.
Indeed.
And when you start to feel that you are happy, you can share that happiness with everyone. In fact, one would argue that each one of us in life actually has a choice every day, every morning when we wake up. We have a choice. Do we want to be happy or unhappy?
Indeed.
And if you want to be unhappy, you can think of 10 reasons
Absolutely.
why your life absolutely sucks and why you should be unhappy. And if you want to be happy, you can always come up with 100 reasons why you still are breathing.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing life to be living in.
And it is absolutely right what you said about solve a problem that 1 billion people want to buy, essentially, or a problem that's experienced by 1 billion people, and you have a phenomenal business and you're serving so many, and that's really factual, isn't it?
It is correct that abundance can never be created by using less of what you have, but abundance is created by creating more of what you need. In fact, I mean, if you look at this universe, and why universe? We look at this multiverse.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a one tiny blue dot in our galaxy.
Yes.
And there are billions of galaxies. Where is the shortage? Shortage of what? We have plenty of land.
Yeah.
We have plenty of water. We have plenty of everything. But it is simply the technological innovation that may not be available today. But we know we are living in a decade of the most innovative part of our humanity.
Absolutely.
In the next 20 years, fundamentally everything that we know exists today will have changed. And I think we should really look at where the world is going to be in the 20 years from now, rather than really focusing on where the world has been. And if I could just add to what you just said, that people who are rich and not so rich drive the car looking at the rear view mirror of what happened. And the people who are actually rich are always not just looking at what's in front of them, but they're also looking where they're going. That means they're always playing where the puck is going to be, not where puck is.
Indeed.
So, right? So not so rich is like in a soccer, the 3-year-olds, when they all go after the ball. Ball goes in a direction, everybody runs in a direction. And the successful players, they stay back because they know ball is going to be coming back.
Absolutely. Because I recently said to my son, I said, there are 3 types of people, son. Okay. I mean, a huge generalization. And he said, he was having a bit of a challenging time at school. And I said, the 3 types of people are the people who make things happen,
Yes.
the people who watch people who make things happen, and the third category, people who wonder what happened.
Yes.
Okay. And majority of that third category people are the very same people who say there's this, shall we say, scarcity.
Yeah.
And the people who watch people making things happen, they watch and say, oh, well, I would like to be that. But they don't actually look into how to make that happen, because success is a formula. And, and I've said to many friends that there's this, it's like a combination lock. You have out of 4 combination digits, if you have 3, you're not going to open it. You need all 4. So work out what you're missing and fix it, essentially. So it's not that complex. It's not rocket science, is it, if you think about it?
Well, even if it's a rocket science, we have to understand that rocket science is well understood rocket science.
Precisely.
Right?
Yeah,
That
indeed.
means just because it happens to be rocket science doesn't mean there are not plenty of rocket scientists who can help you get to where you want to be.
Absolutely,
Right?
yeah.
And I think, another way of looking at the same problem is that, imagining the possibilities of what is possible. Because the day you think something is impossible, it becomes impossible for you.
Yes.
Not for anyone else.
Indeed.
So the minute you start to think, well, geez, this is just not possible. Well, in that case, you're not the one who's going to solve that problem. Someone else is.
Yeah.
And the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself.
Yes.
Because then you know exactly where the world is going to be.
Indeed.
Right.
And you're taking control.
And you're taking control of it.
Now, with so much technological advancement and people who are not in the epicenter, where do you think the world is heading?
Well, Kevin, it's amazing. We are living in a most innovative time of our humanity, if I could say that. In the next 20 years, fundamentally the world would look so different than it looks today. And I know people are scared of where this thing could be. People are worried about chronic unemployment that is going to happen. People are worried that robots are going to start taking their jobs because they're going to become so far superior in their intelligence that humans can't even compete. So imagine today, if you can go look 10 years or 20 years from now, a $1,000 laptop is going to have more power, in fact, the same processing power that our human mind has. It's going to think and act and behave just like humans. It's going to learn by itself. And if you go back 30 years further, or 10 years further, 30 years from now, a computer will have the same processing power as the humans, all humanity combined. Imagine how you and I will compete with someone who has access to all the knowledge of the universe. Right? So that could be a lot of scary. But other way of looking at the stuff is every single technology that is powerful enough to take your job away from you is also powerful enough to help you get the new type of job that you could not do before. So for example, if you are autonomous cars come along so that you don't need a driver because the car will be driving you wherever you want to go. And if you happen to be a driver, you of course will lose your job. But imagine the same artificial intelligence that's powerful enough to drive a car will also be powerful enough for you, who is a driver, to become a nurse or a doctor, because you'll be able to use the artificial intelligence and the sensors to be able to diagnose the diseases that only the most the intelligent doctors could do. Right? So somehow you start to see that how the artificial intelligence would start to merge and augment the human intelligence. And as we have proven time and time again, it is never about the humans versus the robots. It will be human plus robots doing things that neither one of them could do well.
Absolutely.
In fact, human minds are just so good at many things that are very, very difficult for artificial intelligence and robots. And there are a lot of things that artificial intelligence and robots are so good that human mind is just not designed for that. You can give an artificial intelligence 100 digits multiplier. It can do that instantly. Our human mind is just not capable of doing that, right? So if you start to think about what are the other technologies and innovations that are at the cusp of this exponential knee of the curve, where the things are going to absolutely fundamentally change the way we look at life. So think about re-engineering our own human body. Right? Our human body is a software in this hardware that we call a body. That software has not been updated for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. You won't be carrying an iPhone that has been updated for 5 years. Absolutely. And here we are carrying our human body whose software has not been updated. So imagine what happens. This body software is designed when we used to live in the savannas of Africa. We will get the food every so often. And what used to happen? The body, every time you ate the food, body had to store that calories so someday you can continue to live while you still don't have food. What if we can reprogram our body to say, just because I had a big breakfast, don't assume I'm not going to have a big lunch. And if I have a big lunch, don't assume that I'm not going to have a big dinner. I'm going to have a big dinner, a big lunch, and a big breakfast, just to stop storing. And I think that's quite possible now, that we are able to, once we understand how human body works, we'll be able to completely change this, reprogram our human body not to store the calories, so we can all look absolutely perfect.
Absolutely.
Right? That's just human body. Now think about our human brain. What if we can reprogram our human brain so a lot of the things that are fundamentally are designed for perspective of procreation and also survival can be fundamentally changed for higher purpose, right? So that means you start to drive pleasure from doing things that are great for the humanity. And in fact, one could argue that our DNA already is pre-programmed to help others. And the reason I believe that happens is that as we learned as a society that in a small group of tribes, when your tribesmen died, you know the survival for you was very difficult because we all lived close tribe together. So I think in some sense, I would say empathy and compassion is built into our DNA. We do feel the compassion, we do have empathy, and we do want to help others. It's sometimes our prefrontal cortex gets in the way. So we have to be able to reprogram our human brain to actually recreate a compassionate society. Because if we can create a compassionate society, many of the world's problems will simply just go away.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think if you start to look at other problems, whether it happens to be shortage of water, the shortage of energy, or shortage of food, all of these problems are actually can be solved. So if you think about how do we create more food, you can create farming not just in the horizontally in the farms that we have. There is no reason we couldn't be having farms right in the center of London in a vertical towers using aeroponics or aquaponics and have a fresh food right in the middle of where you live. In fact, you can be creating a synthetic food, or people think of synthetic as means something wrong. But the fact is, it's no different than a biological food you eat today. Think about how does the beef get produced. There is a small stem cell that starts and that becomes a muscle tissues and becomes all kinds of body of a cow. What if you can take a stem cell of a cow and it's saying, as opposed to creating all other parts, whether it's a liver or a heart that we don't need, just only create the muscle tissues. And now you can have biofactories of beef anytime you want. And you don't have to have cows. And when you don't have cows, they're not damaging the environment from their methane. They're not eating the food that agriculture is producing. And you're saving so much water because all that water is going into agriculture that is being used. So that means fundamentally our planet can support tens of billions of people once we start to use these innovations. And I think you start to look at, people talk about 3D printing. Well, 3D printing is great because it fundamentally changes a distribution model where you can start to do the things that you need on the spot wherever you are. It's a distributed manufacturing. But imagine if you can have 4D manufacturing or 5D manufacturing, which is the 4D is really how do you create a 3D part that changes when there is certain other catalyst is present, whether it's oxygen or maybe the radiation. And 5D is it also changes over time, right? So I think you start to think about how things will change as we go into 4D and 5D printing. And the biggest thing that I think really change we're going to start seeing is it's only a matter of time that humanity becomes a multi-planetary society. And we will all be going to the moon and the Mars and beyond. And the whole definition one day will change. The honeymoon will no longer be the honeymoon you have on planet Earth. Honeymoon will be about taking your honey to the moon. And that will be your true honeymoon. And those days are not far away.
Absolutely. Naveen, who inspires you today?
Well, I think the life inspires me today, if I could just say that. It's just as broad. I find myself just so high on life. Every day when I wake up in the morning, I know exactly why I love life. There is so much to do. There is so much sense of optimism. Everywhere I look and say, you know what? I think this problem can be solved. Why can't I be that person who solves that problem? And I think my mindset changed when when I was young, I would always find the problem, whether it's a pothole on a road, and say, why can't someone do something about it? And that used to be my mindset. Now, every time I see that pothole, I'm saying, there is an opportunity for me to be fixing the potholes. And there's got to be a big business here. So my whole mindset has changed about looking at a problem from the eyes of opportunities. And once you do that, you start to find the opportunities are everywhere. And I always say, I can create more of everything except more of time. And I want to make the best use of my time every hour I have. So I sleep less and less and less, and I just continue to want to work more and more.
What a way to live. Because, I mean, that's all what life is about, isn't it?
Well, you're right, Kevin. Life is really nothing but strings of experiences. And people somehow look at life as if it's a burden living, right? They say, well, I want to sleep my 10 hours, and God, I hate going to work, but I have to go there for another 8 hours, and I hate my boss. And I'm thinking, why would you want to live a life that you don't enjoy? It's better to not be in a life. Go do something that you enjoy. And I think that, to me, is, I think a lot of people don't realize that you become financially successful by doing things you enjoy. Making money is the byproduct. It's a byproduct of doing things you are not just passionate about, you're obsessed about them.
Absolutely.
If you can be so obsessed about something that you can't sleep, you will find that you will be really good at it. And when you're good at something, I don't care what it is, you will become a financially successful doing that, right?
Naveen, with everything you have achieved, what would you say your greatest achievement is?
Well, for me personally, it is really our children. There is just no doubt about it. How they have grown up to be just some amazing young adults. And I really believe they're going to have a fundamentally positive impact on this society. Our oldest is a great entrepreneur who graduated from Wharton, started a company called Human, and is changing the way people do things. And as an entrepreneur, that's what you really want your child to be.
Absolutely.
Is for him to be not only be an entrepreneur, but doing things that he cares a lot about, and something that's going to have such a large impact on the society.
Yes. And he's actually living proof that he's doing it.
And not only he's doing it, I mean, you look at the people who believe in him. Everyone that you and I would know in our circle are investor in his company because they believe what he's doing is fundamentally so good. And as good as our oldest son is, his sister gives him the run for his money. She is a 20-year-old. She that is Stanford, a junior at Stanford, going to be a senior now.
Yeah.
She's already on the board of Stanford for Women in Business. She's on the board of Stanford Ventures. She's a Stanford Mayfield Fellow. She's a Stanford Stamp Fellow. And she's a global ambassador for UN Foundation for Girls' Education, right?
Gosh, I mean, that's phenomenal.
Phenomenal, isn't
Absolutely,
it? Right?
Yeah.
And our youngest one, who is 18 now, is going to be joining her at Stanford. And that little kid...
This is Neil.
Neil, yes.
Yeah.
So imagine the little kid growing up in the shadows of two amazing siblings.
Yeah.
And he just came on his own. First public speaking, his TED Talk at United Nations.
Wow.
And that wasn't enough. At 16-year-old, he formed a team of other 16-year-olds to build a wireless device that can diagnose the diseases better than the doctors, and took that team to semifinal.
Goodness, right? I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal.
Right? And now imagine that kid, when he grows up to be the same age as the oldest child, where he's going to be. Because what is happening is, each one of them is learning from their own siblings and trying to outdo them in a great, I mean, they love each other, they are great, we are a close family.
Yeah.
But they all are trying to be on their own and doing amazing things. I can't think of a bigger accomplishment. Landing on the moon, I would say, Kevin, is amazing.
Absolutely.
But having a wonderful children is nothing beats that.
So very true, because if, after all, it's what our legacy is going to be, isn't it? I mean, when if you think about everything that you have achieved and accomplished up to now, to have 3 children who are constantly achieving, constantly providing so much towards planet Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what matters.
Well, isn't that what we discussed earlier?
Precisely.
The success is all about not how much money you have in the bank. And it's not even about my legacy. It's about actually having an impact on the society, a positive impact on the society. And the best way to do that is to have amazing children.
Yes.
And every one of us always says, what are we doing to make the country a better country? And I say, as opposed to spending all our energy leaving a better country for our children, let's spend just as much energy leaving the better children for our country.
Yeah.
And our country and our society and our planet will be in much better hands.
Absolutely, because they'll make sure they'll fix it.
Exactly.
So, indeed. Naveen, what was the most challenging time in your life, and how did you manage to overcome it?
Well, I think, every single day in life, you're going to find there are going to be challenges and there are going to be hurdles. And I think there was a switch that happened in my mindset where I start to realize that I don't worry about the things that I just can't control. So I stopped worrying about the things that are out of my control. And I stopped worrying about the things that are in my control because I knew I was doing the absolute best that I could.
Sure.
So that means suddenly there is nothing that would stress me out. There is nothing that will rattle me. The things that are out of my control, I can't do anything anyway. And things that are in my control, I'm doing the best I possibly can. So in some sense, that takes away the idea of what is a challenge. And it takes away the things, what's a hurdle. And just suddenly realizing that there is nothing that can happen fundamentally unless it's a question of life and death. That's going to fundamentally change the way you live your life.
So you had a kind of an attitude of what doesn't kill me makes me stronger.
Or at least, I don't mind dying. It's just the living where you can't do things is the worst part. Being a zombie is what scares me more than death.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I would rather be in a situation where I am doing the things that I enjoy. I have somehow come to a point where I just don't do things that I don't love. I don't do things that I don't enjoy. I don't speak to people I don't like, and I don't do business with people I don't like. And once you get to that point, I think your life is nothing but wonderful. And my life has changed so much as we discussed.
Yes.
I love life.
Yeah.
I just love every minute of my life.
Yeah.
And I find that even cutting down on sleeping time makes me even better. Every day I wake up and I say, oh my God, there is so much to do. And there'll be plenty of time to sleep when we die. So why worry about it?
Absolutely. And it's contagious, isn't it? When you have that mindset, when you have that attitude towards life, good things normally happen to you. Because a lot of people tend to focus on what they don't want, as opposed to what they do want.
Yeah.
And you wake up every morning and you focus on what you do want. And you don't even just focus on it, you just go and just do it.
Yeah. And so Kevin, this is really very interesting. People will always tell you to be successful, you have to know what you're really good at and what you're expert at, and use your expertise to go out and go do things. And to me, what I have found, at least in my life, and I believe that's a lesson that everyone should learn, that disruption rarely comes from the experts in their field. Experts are really good at incremental evolution, but if you want disruptive ideas and want to disrupt something, you have to be completely non-expert, coming from a different angle, not just thinking outside the box, but thinking in a different box altogether. So, coming back to today, what I'm doing is a space exploration. I know nothing about when I started space exploration. And in my next set of ventures, as I'm exiting my current set of ventures, I'm going out in the healthcare. And I tell everybody, you should be scared. I'm a dangerous man because I know nothing about healthcare. That means I'm going to go out and try things that you didn't even imagine are possible. And those are exactly the kind of things that are going to disrupt this healthcare industry completely.
Absolutely. But that's what we need, because if you think about it, there's nothing that has been invented without people going to the other side and looking at things in a very different way. I mean, certainly we wouldn't have had a plane that flies.
Yes.
If you said, no, planes don't fly. Or not planes, but you can't fly. Human beings can't fly,
That's right.
for example. So.
And I think that's exactly right, Kevin. All of these things, you start to look at people and saying, this is just not possible. And as we said, if somebody believes it's not possible, it becomes impossible for them and not someone else, right?
Yeah.
So I am looking at saying healthcare, it is fundamentally on that exponential curve. We now have access to sensors and technologies that will allow us to be able to diagnose every single disease. There's no reason we can't be non-invasively using sound, using your breath to be detecting the cancer, the high definition or ultra UV imaging. All of those things are possible today. It's just that you ask most experts and say, well, that will never work, right? And I'm thinking, wait a sec, why can't I use sound for deep brain stimulation. And if I could do that, I could solve depression, I could solve Parkinson's, I could solve obesity. At the end of the day, our human brain is the epicenter of our human body.
Absolutely.
And if you can somehow figure out and actually make changes to it, you're able to control everything that we do, including our own mindset.
Indeed.
So imagine that.
Yeah, absolutely. Naveen, what are your other interests outside business?
Well, in some sense, the things I do always tend to end up around things that I really enjoy. Mm-hmm. So in some sense, when people ask and people think about life, they're always wondering and saying, how do you draw a balance between your social life and your work life, right? And the fact somebody asked that question has already concluded that those two things are somehow mutually exclusive, because the only time you try to balance things are the things when they are essentially opposite of each other. You can't have one. If you want this, you can't have this. And what I realize in life is that life is really a continuum. It's sometimes more of one and sometimes there is more of other, but it really is a continuum. So the tend to be that things that I enjoy the most and call them hobbies end up becoming the businesses that I end up creating. So, there are times that I was really, really fascinated by space. And guess what happened? It was a matter of time. I created a company to go do the space exploration. And then I started to get really fascinated by human mind. And now I'm starting to look at creating a company around deep brain stimulation. And what really starts to fascinate me is that, our human body, why are we living with a human body that just is so obsolete? And then I'm starting to think about how do we go out and create a life that is so enjoyable. And it's not about living forever. It's about living as long as you want, but living the life that you want, right?
Quality as opposed to quantity.
The quality and even the quantity as much as you want, right? So the point really is that there is difference between the business and the things you enjoy. Doesn't have to be the separate. The things that you enjoy can itself be the business that you create.
Absolutely. And as we were talking about before, essentially, we don't deal with people that we don't like, right?
And we don't do the things that we don't like.
Absolutely. and that's a great place to be, because it's not a case of just tolerating something for the sake of it, and then it becomes a bit of a drag, doesn't it?
Well, more than bit of a drag, it becomes a full drag altogether.
Precisely, yeah. And I think we were talking about definition of success and about success. Success is doing, I think, for me anyway, doing what I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it.
Yeah. As I said, success is really a journey. It's like sex. It's who you want to do it with and how you do it. It's all comes together.
Absolutely, yes. Naveen, what has been your most exciting project up to now?
Well, I honestly have to admit that every single project I have done is because they were so exciting. And I think my last project that I'm working on, the MoonExpress, is just an amazingly fun project, right? There are very few things you do in life that are just great fun and amazing businesses. So to me, the going to the moon is not just about going to the moon. It is about that inspiration of what humans and individuals are capable of doing. So imagine today, Kevin, there are only 3 superpowers that have ever landed on the moon. Right? Now imagine if an immigrant who came from India from poverty can dream so big that he wants to go and land on the moon. And if I and a small group of people can make that happen, imagine the inspiration you create for anyone in the world of what they can do.
That's phenomenal,
isn't
it?
Right. So it's not the United Kingdom that went to the moon. It is not Germany or it's not France. We become, as a small group of people and a company, that becomes the 4th superpower to land on the moon. And what if we are able to bring back the stuff from the moon? That will become the 2nd superpower to be able to go do that. Right?
Staggering.
Staggering, isn't
yes.
it? So now imagine, so people say, how is that possible? It is that imagination of what is possible. It is about dreaming so big that people think it's crazy, right? And that is what allows someone like us to go out and do these things.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you go back and remember that no one ever did run a mile under 4 minutes because they thought it was not possible.
Yes.
Right?
Roger Bannister.
Until the Roger Bannister did that. Yeah. Guess what happened after that? After that, within 3 years, there were tens of people who did the same thing again, achieved the feat of running under a mile under 4 minutes. So imagine that once we land on the moon, it is what a great inspiration that would be for the society. The next group of people will not just land on the moon, they'll be landing on the Mars. And then other group of people will be going out and say, why can't we create the habitat on the moon and really move the society from one planet to another planet? And amazing things will start to happen.
So ripple effect as well as compounding effect.
Absolutely. And now people say, what would you do? What business can you possibly create from this moon? Because most people think the moon is nothing but a Swiss cheese.
Yes.
I can tell you that it's more than a Swiss cheese. The moon really has quadrillions worth of minerals on the moon. Moon is nothing but our sister planet. And that sister planet, there is rare earth elements, and they're called rare earth elements. They're not called rare moon elements. They are in abundance on the moon. There is helium-3, there is platinum grade materials. And more than anything else, if you just bring the moon rock back, just the moon rocks itself can be tremendous valuable as a novelty items. Today, no individual can own a moon rock. They're all the property of the government, because they are the only people who went to the moon and brought them back. Right? Now imagine, the diamonds are not even rare on Earth, but they are made rare by simply brilliant marketing by De Beers and by simply releasing them in slowly. Mm-hmm. Now, like any entrepreneurs will think, once a company, any monopolistic company has 100% market share, that becomes their Achilles heel because there is no other novelty left there. Absolutely. So what if we change the paradigm? And when I bring the moon rock and we change the paradigm to say, everyone gives someone a diamond. If you love her enough, you will give her the moon. And every woman will say, don't you love me enough? And they will give her the moon. And that moon will come obviously from MoonExpress, right?
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Right? Yes. And then as we start to take people to the moon and allowing that, easily affordable way, we'll change the definition of honeymoon, that it will no longer be honeymoon unless you take your honey to the moon, and that will become the real honeymoon,
yes.
right? And
that's staggering.
That's staggering, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the reason most people don't, they say, what other things you can possibly do on the moon? And I say, nobody ever asked Steve Jobs. Or Steve Jobs never asked the people and say, hey, we have this iPhone, we're going to start having applications on this phone. What type of things would you like to do on the phone? If he did ask, there is not a single individual who would have said, you know what, I would love to throw the birds at the pigs. But that's exactly what they did. My point is, what people do, they can't even imagine until you put in front of them. Yes. So what will happen when we land on the moon? It's only our imagination that limits us, right? In fact, our society's progress is always about what we can imagine. I vividly remember my mom telling me, son, you can do anything you want. Sky is the limit. What she forgot to tell me was, son, sky is nothing but a figment of your imagination. Your imagination is your only limit. Because if you remember, if you go from Earth anywhere you want in the space, you never pass the sky, because there was no sky. Sky is a boundary that we create in our own mind. Absolutely. It just doesn't exist, yes. Right? So all we have to do is imagine. And if you can imagine, you can do it.
Indeed. Naveen, you found your passion. How does everyone find their own passion?
Well, what I find is that most people are always thinking is something is going to come and hit them, and the passion is somehow like an apple is going to drop on Newton's head and say, oh, I found it, right? Yes. But I think it's really this simple. If you just go through this exercise and says, what if I have everything that I ever wanted, $1 billion, a beautiful house, the car I want to drive, and a beautiful family. What is it that I would do then? And the things that you would do then is the things you should be doing now to get everything that you want. So your true passion is something that you would do when you had everything in your life that you ever wanted. And if you were to do exactly that today, you will get everything that you ever wanted.
Absolutely. And I've never heard that.
Thank you.
I must say, well done, because a lot of people are very confused about finding their passion, and there's lots of books written about it and so on and so forth. But never has anyone said that in such succinct manner. Naveen, when you got to the States and you had $5 in your pocket, how did you achieve what you have achieved?
Well, we grew up in India in a very humble beginnings, and we moved from village to village, and living in a very remote villages where there was, times where there were no food to eat, and schooling was very poor. There were no tables, no chairs. We sat on the floor and we wrote on the floor. But that dream that we were never going to allow anyone for us to be stopping us from what we are capable of achieving. My sister, who is my older sister, went on to do a postdoctorate in applied mathematics. My younger brother has a PhD in statistics and a PhD in computer science. I am the least educated person in my family with engineering from IIT and MBA. And I came to the United States with $5 in my pocket and an amazing dream of making a life on my own. And I think what I love about America is it gave me a chance to look at the world so differently. When I was in India, I always thought, what would people think about what I'm doing? I was always worried about what would someone say. And I tell you, most people still to date, I talk to them and they always say, well, what will someone say about this thing? I say, it doesn't matter what someone is going to say about it. You have to learn to live with yourself. What would you say if you didn't take this opportunity that's on your way? Yes. Could you be able to live with your own life thinking that an opportunity was knocking on the door and I didn't answer? Right. So to me, that mindset change to me was that there was nothing that I was not capable of doing, and there was nothing that I wasn't going to try. And I may not have been the smartest person in the room, but I knew I was going to be the most persistent person in the room. Coming from a background which in humble beginnings, there is very little you can afford, you can't lose. Well, so what? If I fail, is only reason I'm going to fail is because I gave up. What have I got to lose? Not have a food, been there, done that. Yes. That's not going to change, right? So to me, it gave me the chance to say that I really can do anything. And having my mom tell me that you are capable of doing it, it really gave me a lot of confidence that I'm going to go out and try big things. And God has amazing power in some sense, if I could use the word God here, is that when you really believe in something and you're really obsessed and passionate about something, I believe the universe aligns itself to make things happen. Right? The things start to come together. You start to meet the people who are going to help you. You start to find the ways to do things that were never possible, or at least you couldn't think was possible, right? And suddenly everything starts to come together. So to me, I really tell everyone, if you really care about something and you really want to do something, the first thing is to go start doing it. Taking action is the first thing you do. You can keep thinking about it, nothing is going to happen. The day you say, I'm going to go do it, is the day you've taken the first step to make it happen.
Absolutely, because as Rome wasn't built in a day, was it? It was built brick by brick.
It is always, life is always built by brick. Irrespective of 3D printing, it's still going to take a time.
Indeed. And what a lot of people don't realize also, I'm sure you find this, is that they see people who are successful and they don't appreciate what amount of great difficulty or challenges that they've had to go through, the sleepless nights and so on and so forth, to get to that point. All they see is, oh, they've achieved it. And there's this type of instant, I want to be an instant success. And, there really isn't a thing called instant success, is there? Oh,
well, of course not. We all know that. We all are the self-made people, and we know behind every so-called overnight success, there is years and years of hard work and tears and sleepless night that goes into it. I remember, when I started my first company, there'll be 2 o'clock, I'll get a call, the servers are not working. And so I walked in the snow to the office to reboot the servers. And people forget and they say, oh, so this was an instant success. Well, where were you when at 2 o'clock I was walking in the snow trying to reboot the server, right?
Yes.
So point is, it does take a lot of hard work, and it takes an amazing amount of luck. If I ever had, God ever gave me a choice of being smart or being lucky, I'll being pick lucky every day.
Absolutely. And don't you think you make your luck by going on what you are passionate about? And as you said, the universe does align,
Yeah.
doesn't it? And you have doors open that you never thought were possible, or you meet people that you never thought you would meet. And and this propels, doesn't it?
It does. So I think it's not only that. Being lucky, when I say really means, is about going out and continuing to pursue, and everything starts to fall in place. These are the pieces of the puzzle. When you're trying and going out and doing it, you will meet people that you never thought you will meet. You'll find people who are willing to help you that never thought will help you. And suddenly everything starts to happen. So the first step is to just go do it. And remember, it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take an amazing amount of hard work. There is no such thing as easy success. So if you think you're looking for an easy success, go marry rich.
Absolutely. Naveen, how do you instill the passion and drive that you have into your children?
Well, I think it's the same thing. It's redefining what success is. So if you define and you live the life where you start to show them that you believe the success is all about having a amount of money in the bank that you have, or it's all about financial success, they're going to emulate you. Right? But if you define the success about having, it's really a journey where you are impacting as many people as you can positively along the life, that journey continues. So if you redefine success and say, you know what, you're going to be amazingly successful when you're able to impact billions of people in their life in the positive way. And if the success for them, it doesn't matter what mom and dad do. And I think the biggest change that I would say as a parent that we made was, it wasn't what we tell them. And most parents tell the same things, but they don't follow them, they don't do it. Mm-hmm. So for example, when I started my first company, it became amazingly successful. And there is no doubt in my mind, I could have easily sat and retired and said, you know what, in the disguise of I want to spend time with my family, sat on the sofa and watched the CNBC. Guess what? My children would have grown up to say, I want to be just like my dad, who sits on the sofa, puts his hands in the underwear, and he watches TV. We want to be just like him. You know what they watched? I started the second company, and the third company, and the fourth company, and the fifth company, and they saw me that I do things because I enjoy doing them, not because I was doing for the reason of trying to make more money. And really, it became not living just every one of us has a chance to live a life of success. And I taught them it's more important than you live a life of significance. That how do you go out and live every single day where you feel you made an impact on someone else's life?
And that's really what we're here to do, isn't it?
That's exactly what we should be doing every day.
Yeah.
Right? For ourselves and everyone else.
Yes.
Right?
Indeed.
Make ourselves better every single day. So I pray and I meditate twice a day. And when I go to bed every single day, I ask myself, what were the things that happened that I'm so blessed for? And am I better today than I was yesterday? Intellectually, emotionally, or spiritually? And I want to get that answer every single day, that I've done something that made me a better person. And have I made someone else's life better today?
And if you didn't have a day like that?
I would work twice as hard next day to make sure it happens to,
That's what's important. Because what people don't realize is no day goes perfectly.
Yes.
And sometimes, you have the perfect attitude and perfect way of dealing with the day, and you have some challenges or you meet people who are discouraging. Yeah. But it's about saying, this day has ended and I'll make sure tomorrow is even better.
Right. And don't let someone else tell you what you can't do, or don't let someone else tell you who you are, right? Precisely. And I think that is where most people go wrong. Their self-esteem is so low that they allow people to redefine who they are. So when someone comes to me and were to say, Naveen, you are really ignorant. Now my answer normally would be, I wish you got to know me better. Right? That means you probably are ignorant, that you didn't even get a chance to know me and you already concluded that I'm ignorant. Right?
Precisely.
Right? And I think a lot of people get so rattled because they let someone else define them. So to me, I know who I am and I'm comfortable who I am.
Yeah.
And I can't let someone else tell me who I am that I'm not.
Indeed, and that comes with deep self-confidence comes from self-esteem, and self-esteem comes really from actually liking who you are. You know, I mean, I know people say, you know, you've got to love who you are.
That's right.
But I mean, if you can like yourself and respect yourself as a decent individual, then you don't need to be in, shall we say, trying to please everyone around you.
Well, more than that, if you don't really love yourself, how can you allow someone else to love you? And
Absolutely.
People never find their true love in their personal life or business life because they can't even like themselves. How could they expect someone else to like them?
Indeed. And the other worst thing that I find what people do is that they look at people who are successful,
Yeah.
look at people who are achieving, and then they have this attitude of that they owe them something, and that they dislike that success, or there's jealousy, or they try to put upon guilt. I mean, you know, and what they don't realize is that these people have taken risks. They get up in the morning, they do things that other people don't do. That makes them extraordinary, essentially. And they achieved their success through hard work, smart thinking, and lots of sacrifices, as well as essentially ingenuity and flair.
Well, not only I agree with you, Kevin, but if you were to think about it, the best way to create a $10 billion company is to solve a $100 billion problem, right?
Absolutely.
And doing well and doing good are not mutually exclusive.
Yes.
That means you can do a tremendous amount of good and create a business. So never be ashamed of saying that your business is profitable, because a business that's not profitable is not sustainable. So we need to take away this whole idea of a social entrepreneur, because I think a social entrepreneur is a concept that itself is doing a, I would say, injustice to the society. Because when you create social entrepreneurs, what you're really saying is we have a group of people who can't be as successful entrepreneurs, so we're going to give them a consolation prize of making them as social entrepreneurs, because they're really good entrepreneurs, they'll go out and create a business, right? So these social entrepreneurs by definition are not the best people who are trying to solve the biggest problems. So why not allow the successful business people to go out and create amazing businesses that provides a clean water to billions of people, that provides a food to every single human being, that provides everything, that and the abundance of energy to everyone who needs it. And if you were to do so and create a billions of dollars in market cap, you know what? My hat's off to you, and nobody's going to come and say, how dare you provide clean water to everyone. They're going to say, I'm so happy you did that, and I wish you had made more money. So never
Absolutely.
be ashamed of being successful, and never feel guilty about being successful, because to you, it should always be about doing plenty of good and making sure it's a profitable business and you're doing well yourself while creating the business.
Indeed. Naveen, what's your favorite place in the world to relax?
Home, not doing anything.
What about when it comes to going on holiday? Do you have a favorite location?
I love going to British Virgin Island, especially the Necker Island there. I think it's just so amazing fun there.
Oh, I'm sure Richard would love you saying that.
Oh, Richard and I get along really well.
What do you do first thing in the morning?
I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do is I pray. So every single day in the morning, I take 5 minutes just to pray and meditate and what my day is going to be. And then I go work out, and then I do my emails, and then I make a tea for myself, and I make a tea for my wife, and then I relax. So at the end of the day, actually, is more or less a very similar pattern. I would, before going to sleep, I always meditate and reflect on the day that just went. I also am constantly connected, so I'm always working. I'm always connected and doing things that I just love. And in many of the times, I mean, as you know, I'm a parallel entrepreneur, not a serial entrepreneur. So I always have 4 or 5 things that I'm doing at the same time. And there is always something that needs my attention.
Absolutely.
And then, I also have lots of guilty pleasure, and sometimes I just, go with my wife and just simply enjoy some, boring TV show, or at least I wouldn't say boring, a fun TV show that's probably just for guilty pleasure.
And obviously quality time with each other.
Of course, yes.
Naveen, if you had a very limited time to live,
Yeah.
what advice would you give someone that would be, in your view, the most important advice?
Do only the things that you absolutely love. You can always create more of everything in life except time. Make it count.
And when you look at that, we all have to do sometimes things that we don't love. We love the majority of what we do, but some things are necessary in business, like accounts, for example. Some love accounts and looking at P&L, and some hate. I mean, I don't enjoy it, basically, and I know Richard doesn't enjoy looking at P&L either. But you have to do some things that you don't love, but it's somewhat necessary. But what you're saying is, do majority of the time what you do, you have to love.
No, for the purpose of doing things that you love. So it's not about
Right.
every single task that you have to love, but it's the purpose that you have to love, that why you're doing them.
And the reason I asked that question is because so many people misinterpret that. Okay, and they say, do what you love. And a lot of people go, well, I love just watching TV.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not me, but they say, oh, I love just doing nothing. So...
Well, if you believe your life is worth living just for watching TV, you're better off being dead, because you're really
Precisely.
not contributing much to the society at that point,
Yes.
other than through the Nielsen rating maybe.
Indeed. And I think that's what's key. So what you're essentially saying is focus on what you love and do whatever it takes to get to that point.
And that's right. And sometimes many of the tasks along the way may not be just as much fun, but it's the ultimate journey that you are on. That is what makes it fun.
Precisely, yes. Naveen, you said you meditate. What type of meditation is it?
Well, it's primarily just about sitting quiet and just focusing on breathing. And I think when you focus on breathing, that really is your life. You're really looking at life going in and out. And in some sense, focusing on breathing allows you to take away everything else from the thought from your mind. And that's probably the best focus I ever get.
And do you feel that you get inspired thought after that?
I think the most inspiring thoughts I get are the things when I'm not thinking about getting inspiring thoughts.
Absolutely.
And I think that probably I would say taking shower for whatever reasons works for me. When I'm taking showers, I get more ideas for, I don't know why.
Same here. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I'm just taking a hot water shower, not thinking of things, and suddenly I say, oh my God, this is how you do it, right?
Yes.
And it's amazing how the clarity of thought happens when you're just not doing things.
Yes, indeed. Do you know why that happens?
And I think it's basically is that it allows the mind to just wander. And I think when you allow the mind to wander, and you can be very, very creative. And now I think you could potentially argue that they have found that creativity can be increased by allowing your mind to essentially oscillate in the alpha wave at 10 hertz. So if you can create a good apparatus that attaches to the head and create the 10 hertz wave, you can increase the creativity significantly.
Wow. And have you done that?
I've at least read about it, and I think it may be the next project that I work on.
Now, I mean, when somebody hits a real stumbling block, financially, let's say, and they're in a point where they are wondering, look, I've worked hard, I've spent a lot of time, energy in doing various things, but nothing's really rocketed them to financial success. What are the steps that you would advise them to take?
Well, first thing is, like anything else, don't get married to an idea. Get married to really winning for success rather than winning for an idea, right? That means continuously pivot until you succeed, and continuously learn and change and learn and adapt. And if you're doing that, eventually you will find the right successful formula. In fact, many of the successful companies came out of the failed ideas. Right. So I think in some sense, a lot of people who are wealthy, and sometimes when they lose money in the stock market, they get depressed. And to me, this really is hard to imagine when people think like that. I always believe that, the money that you have, you're simply a custodian or a trustee of God's kindness. And if you look at yourself simply as a trustee of his kindness, then you start to wonder and say, look, what am I afraid of? He still believes in me because he left me enough. If he didn't believe in me, he would have taken everything. The fact he believes in me, that means I have to go out and use this to do more good in the world and create amazing businesses that will help more people. And eventually all that will come back.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think people start to get attached to what they have rather than simply feeling that this is simply a custodian or you're a trustee, and use them as the best you can.
In other words, their self-concept becomes the amount of money they have.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think especially men, I would say, have a very difficult time understanding who they are. Most men become their business card. And in fact, if you ask them who they are, they're so quick to point out they're CEO of blah. And in fact, here's the worst part. When they retire, when you ask them who they are, they say, I'm a former CEO of blah. They can never become anything other than their business card.
Absolutely.
And they fall in love with their business card rather than being who they are, a father, an entrepreneur, a dreamer, or someone who really cares about something. They become their own business card.
Indeed.
Right? And I think the only lesson I could also probably give you in the same thing is that people focus so much on, saying what they need to say, the right things to say. And what they forget is that everyone they meet, they will eventually forget what they said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. How you make them feel becomes your business card. So make everyone feel important, make everyone feel good about themselves. So it's not about what you say, it's how you make them feel. So make them feel worth $1 billion, and the person you meet will feel like $1 billion.
Absolutely. Naveen, it's really been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.